Welcome back to the channel, and today we're taking a look at some Artisan Cutlery knives. They've been just killing it. We have the Revel here. This is the more limited Revel with the beautiful micro milled tie scales and the Magna Cut blade. This is a Revel Conico design, and I'm just finishing up the testing on this one, and spoiler, I love it. Absolutely love it. Great size, nice minimal form factor when it's closed. It doesn't take up a whole lot. Look how thin it is. Good weight on this one, comfortable. I love this knife more than I ever expected. And then they dropped the Cleo. This one really has surprised me. It kind of has that CRKT Polar blade without all the issues like all mine have had. S90V steel. Look at that beautiful, you either call it a micro frag or micro diamond texture. It's more of a diamond texture. You get the contoured mill tie clip. Beautiful action. Woo! And I can choke up on it. Another S90V blade. There's the designer's maker's mark. And they've been killing it. One after another after another. Either one of these interests you, I will have them linked down in the description along with. Today we're looking at the brand new Artisan Cutlery Wizard. This is a Kickstarter campaign knife, and they had a pledge of $3,000. They have definitely met their goal. They are now at $111,734 with 272 backers, 25 days left to go. So if you want to get this knife a little cheaper, I think it's like 30% or something like that cheaper than it would be whenever it comes out at the dealers, then get in on this Kickstarter campaign. So they started the campaign launch in August and product quality control and shipping in October. So it's not going to be a super long wait for these knives to come out. They started production. And if you're not into the whole Kickstarter thing, don't worry. Once they fill that Kickstarter and then the run starts going out to dealers and stuff, you'll be able to get it then. After, it'll just be a little bit more expensive. So like the last Kickstarter campaign that Artisan did, there's different levels. This is the entry level, the Sorcerer, and it comes with this fat carbon inlay on both sides, and this is going to be the lightest of the group. The next level is the Mage. This one has a Damascus inlay, filler tab, pivot collar, back spacer, and pocket clip. So good bit of Damascus on here. Both of these are in S90V steel. Then you can bump up to the Magna Mage, which is a limited run. They only have 200 pieces of that one. And it's the exact same configuration as this one, but instead of the S90V, it's CPM Magna Cut steel. Then you have the cream of the crop, the Enchanter. That one's going to be kind of like this boa. It's going to have full Damascus everywhere, just like this one. And it also has the mirror polish, as you can see there, mirror polished S90V blade on it. And like I said, that one will be the cream of the crop. And even though it's an expensive version of it, it's actually pretty darn well priced. I'll have the Kickstarter link down in the description if you're interested. Loving the size of this one. It's coming in at 7.64 inches long. It has a 3.47 inch blade and a 4.17 inch handle. So it fits my medium-sized hands perfectly. Should fit large hands as well because you have a semi forward finger choil that you can kind of do a pistol grip on if you want to choke up. I can get kind of close to it, but you know, I'm more in this area right here. I feel more comfortable that way. I'm not as close to that edge. On the Kickstarter, they're calling this a clip point. I would say this is more of like a harpoon drop point. You call it whatever you want. Doesn't really matter to me. But you have this nice top swedge. Goes down, thins that tip out. So you have a nice tip for doing detail work, and it should work rather well for that. If you look down, the tip is a little bit above the center line of these scales, but it should still be fairly versatile, and I can still get that tip easily on the materials. So this should be a fairly versatile blade shape. It has their sand polished. I don't really know what that is, but it's basically a satin finish. It is a fingerprint magnet. You do have a small row of jimping there. That is pretty effective. It grips my finger nicely. I do wish they would have extended it out to this little forward portion right there. So when you're choked up, you have some. Not something that is a deal breaker for me, but I do know some people, you know, got to have their jimping. And I think it would have just been a lot better to come out further. You have dual thumb studs. We'll talk about that in the deployment section. My biggest gripe on this knife that I noticed for the most part is the sharpening choil. As you can see, it is starting to flare out already. Just a little bit. Not so much on this side. The reason why this one came out like that is because the bevel may be a little bit bigger and they may have put a little bit more pressure there. But I hate seeing that because after the first time I sharpen it, it's going to flare out even more. Hopefully you can see that the plunge grind's coming right here. So the next time I sharpen it, it's going to come out wider and wider unless I extend that sharpening choil myself. And if you do decide to extend that sharpening choil, you're definitely gonna have to be careful because this is the end of the edge right here. And this is where it's seating at right here. So if you do decide to open that up yourself, I usually take a felt tip marker and put a line right in front of this bar. That way I know not to go past that. But it would have definitely been nice to see that done out of the factory. This one has a nice high flat grind, and it comes down nice and thin to around 17 thousandths behind the edge. Let's see what it can do. Man, this knife came stupid sharp out of box. Artisan did an excellent job. It's slicing very, very well. Now, I will say I did find myself creeping up into that semi-forward finger choil just so I wouldn't get hung up in that area. With gloves on, it felt nice and safe. I wasn't, worried I was going to cut myself or anything. But man, this thing is slicing so very well. I just hope this edge remains as crisp as it is right now. I don't see why it should. I mean, I've tested quite a bit of Artisan's S90V and it all performed really well for me. No issues. It sharpens well too. Now we're testing the ergos on this piece of pine. Starting out light, just to see how the edge wants to bite. Of course, I picked a jacked up piece to try this on. It's got like these knots, little bitty knots everywhere. But I'm choked up a little bit, getting a good bit of force into the wood. And it was good all the way until I really started. I mean, I'm bearing down right now really hard into that wood. I did start to feel the tips of the pocket clip a little bit. It wasn't terrible or anything, but something I thought you should know. And right here, after this first cut into the 1/2 inch sisal rope, I'm like, yes, thank you for giving me this sharp of a knife. You can see me go back and forth from that index finger grip, and anytime I'm doing that grip, the knife has to be sharp because if it's not, my fingers aren't strong enough to do that grip. And I try to do that as much as I can just so I alleviate the blister I have on my finger. And this one has the perfect amount of belly. You can easily do cuts on a flat cutting surface, no problems whatsoever. And then when I was doing those in-hand cuts, I didn't feel like I was going to slide out of the cardboard at all. And it felt pretty good the entire way. Now, I say this all the time, but I'm not testing for edge retention, so you're not going to see me trying to cut more than I feel I need to with the sisal rope and some of these other ones. I'm just mainly testing for how it feels while I cut, how well it slices, and making sure that it doesn't just go dull after the second, third cut or anything. I mean, I have an idea of how Artisan Cutlery's S90V should feel about at the end of, say, the sisal rope and stuff like that. And I haven't had any issues with any of their knives going dull prematurely or anything. I think we cut like 180 cuts, and it felt really, really good by the end of it. Nice and crisp edge. Yeah. See, I can still get that tip down into the material. You do have to come up a little bit higher because it's not in the center, but all the other cuts are going to be a breeze. I mean, it blasts through all these other ones. Nothing gave it any trouble. The dense tubing, no problem whatsoever. Dense cardboard, absolutely no problem. And some knives struggle with that. And then the 10-ounce denim, no problem. I did have problems. Something was slick on my cutting board and it was causing the denim to slide a little bit, but once I got it stabilized, it's blasting through it. No problem. Excellent job. I absolutely enjoyed testing this knife. I must say this thing performed very, very well. I had a lot of fun testing this one, and the edge that it came with was very, very crisp. It had good toothiness to it, so that right there sets this knife over the top for me because I already love the whole overall aesthetics and form factor of this knife. So let's look at the deployment action of this knife. You have a front flipper, and then you have dual thumb studs. So thumb studs, I can easily access those. Nice crisp break. Flies out, riding on ceramic bearings. And then you have this front flipper. You can do the reach around because it's a button lock. You don't have to worry about putting your finger on a lock. As soon as you let off that button, it's a free faller. Let's see. The jimping's grippy. I do wish they would have brought one more jimp out to about right there, because usually, especially where this one sits, you're going to be grabbing the top of that. And being that it doesn't have a jimp there, you could slide off of it. I mean, whenever I usually just do the reach around like this and do it. You can also use that button to deploy it. But if you grab below that last jump right there, you're going to be fine. I just think it would have been a lot smarter to put one up here because that is a little slick up there on the top. It doesn't bother me because I don't like front flippers at all. As long as there's another deployment method, I'm going to use it over the front flipper. But that's just me. Your mileage may vary. Both of them have outstanding actions. Both have a nice crisp break to it. I have not taken them apart. Look at that. Out of the box, it was nice, crisp, and smooth. Yeah, it's definitely a fidgety knife. Now let's take a look at the handle area. So on this variation, you have just like a bead blasted tie frame. So it's like a light gray. And then you have I think it's Arctic Storm fat carbon inlays. There's no gaps, no high spots. They did an excellent job. And they also put it on the opposite side. Very happy to see that. It throws my OCD tendencies off completely whenever it's only on one side. So very happy to see it on both sides. You have beautiful, hopefully it's coming across, but you have beautiful softening of those edges. So it's really comfortable in hand during all the cutting. It was very comfortable. The only minor hot spot that I noticed is whenever I was doing that wood shaving and I'm really bearing down, I was kind of holding the knife like this. Whenever I was really bearing down, I could kind of feel this back point on that pocket clip. It wasn't terrible or anything. And, you know, are you going to be using it like that? I mean, I don't usually have to, you know, force that much pressure into a knife, and I could have choked up and missed it altogether. So it's just a very minor nitpick. I do wish they would have rounded this over a little bit more on this point right here, just because it has somewhat of like, you know, possible hot spot, but it's very low profile. So I didn't feel it, like I said, until the very, very end. But even though these seem to be flat scales, they felt more like contoured scales because of all these softened edges. I mean, just look at that. That's beautifully done. Excellent job. They even rounded over this corner right there. All these transitions are rounded over. I love seeing that. I think it's a nice slim package. All your hardware is Torx T8. Excellent job there. Then you have this cool little filler tab for the pocket clip right here. I think that looks neat. And on this version, it's just a titanium filler tab. So if you wanted to anodize that a different color, you could. And then you have a blind screwed mill tie clip. Very discreet looking clip. Now this is my second gripe on this knife, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I did not really notice this until I carried this in my jeans, but you can see you don't have much space underneath there at all. So let me show you what happens. This is what happens right here. Hopefully you can see that. Look, there you go. That's where it was basically stopping. So I was thinking that it was all the way down, but because of how, you know, skinny it is underneath there, you got to force it down in there. Now, depending, I mean, these are not the thickest seams on my jeans. I have some thicker ones than that. But once it does go all the way down there, it sits nice. That's all you have sticking out. Very discreet pocket clip, holds it in there nicely. But I definitely think they should have given a little bit more room underneath there. And then being that this is very slim underneath there, then that means the ramp is going to be slim also. So I can get it in there, and if you're conscious about putting it in the pocket, just kind of pushing it all the way down, it'll go underneath there. But it's just something you're gonna have to get used to. I really like the way they did the backspacer. You have pretty much like a floating backspacer As you can see there, especially right here, it has the appearance that it's floating till you see the little pillars. And on this one, I'm guessing those pillars are tie. On the Damascus Mage model, you can see those little pillars, or those little whatever those things are also Damascus or titanium Damascus. So I'm guessing the ones on the Sorcerer are titanium, but very cool that they went that far. And I think the floating backspacer is just very nice touch there. All right, you have the milling for the inlays on these, and something you don't hardly ever see Artisan Cutlery doing, especially on Artisan Cutlery release models, is internal milling like this. Now they do it, but you don't see it that often. And the reason why they don't usually do it all that often is because they do thinner titanium scales. But you have tons of skeletonization on the top and bottom, being this is a button lock. And the weight on this knife is really, really nice. Your weight on your Sorcerer model with the fat carbon inlay comes in at 86 grams or 3.03 ounces. So that's well under the ounce an inch of blade, because the blade length on this is 3.47 inches. So excellent job. Then you will bump it up a little bit more with the Damascus, because that's all tie construction here. And it's still nice and lightweight at 3.17 ounces. Very, very good job on that weight reduction. Now let's take a look at the lock. So we have the button lock here. You have a recess spot so you don't accidentally disengage that. Nice and solid lockup. Yeah, very tight lockup. No movement in any direction on mine, and very smooth. Now for some quick size comparisons, we have the Ontario Rat 1 and 2. It's in the middle of those. Next we have the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, and it's in the middle of those. And even though the Para 2 is a decent bit larger, you have a good bit more cutting edge on the Wizard. And lastly, we have the Kanwu Pulsar and the Civivi Socoke. Both of these are very, very close in overall length. They're both just a hair shorter. All right, now for my nitpicks and complaints. I would have loved a bigger sharpening choil because it's going to start to flare after the first sharpening. Something I can fix it myself. You just got to be very careful. It would have been nice to have it done already out of the factory. Second is the space underneath that pocket clip. They definitely could have given us a little bit more here, a little bit more ramp. Now, as long as you're mindful, you can push it all the way to the back. But if you have super thick pant seams, then this one may not fit underneath there. And like I said earlier, I wish I would have knocked this little corner down a little bit more and right up in this area, just because whenever I was really, really bearing down, I could start to feel that. But, you know, are you going to be using this type of knife like that? Probably not. All right, what are my final thoughts? I absolutely love this knife. Absolutely love it. No matter which one you go with, I think you'll be happy, as long as, you know, the sharpening choil is not a deal breaker for you and the space underneath that clip. If that's not a deal breaker for you, and for me, it honestly wouldn't have been, because I like this knife enough that after I sharpen it, I wouldn't mind just fixing that myself if I needed to. And I'm already used to the space underneath the clip, so it doesn't bother me all that bad. It's sliced very, very well. It's such an easy knife to carry. Another thing I love about this design is the blade almost looks like it's too long for the handle. They fit every bit of blade they could in there, and you still can't come in contact in the closed position. Excellent job. If you're looking for a good looking knife that's nice and lightweight, it looks very, very attractive. Every single one of the different levels, in my opinion, are awesome. If you want it to be a little bit of bling, you could go with this one. You know, you get the S90V blade, or you could go with the more limited piece with this setup with the MagnaCut. Or if you want to get a super blinged out version like this, then now's the time to get it, because you'll never find a full Damascus knife cheaper than that. I can promise you that. So like I said in the beginning, I will have all the necessary links down in the description if you're interested in joining this Kickstarter campaign. If you have any questions in particular, feel free to ask me down below. I'll do my best to get back with you. I hope every one of y'all is having an absolute amazing day. I will see y'all on the next one. Sir.